Okay, so what are the concerns with the rise of Gen AI in higher education? Well, the major concern is certainly around its impact on assessment practices. And when ChatGPT was launched, um, you saw a whole range of headlines like this, where ChatGPT was able to pass things like medical school exams, law bar exams, pass interview examinations for highly skilled graduate level jobs. And there's certainly a list on this link here of all the different things that it can pass. But is it founded? Are these true? Well, actually, OpenAI that make ChatGPT tool and the large language models behind it have actually done some very robust research on their own tool. And looking at ChatGPT-4, which is the large multimodal model that uses the corpus of knowledge on the internet in order to help solve its foundations for its algorithm. They've done quite an in-depth study on a wide range of assessment examinations. It's quite interesting to see the kind of the preface to this piece of work, where it says, whilst less capable than humans in many real-world scenarios, it exhibits human-level performance on various professional and academic benchmarks. So how does that hold up? So this particular study, full details are on the previous link, it can be summarized perhaps by this graph here. So this graph shows the difference between the current model, GPT-4, and the previous version of the model, ChatGPT 3.5, which is the one that used the closed database of over 300 billion words. And it uses a range of examinations which are designed for humans. So most of these are publicly available things like the Olympiads and the AP with free response questions, or they purchased 2023 practice exams. So they didn't specifically train the model for these exams, though a small number of the problems were seen by the examination in the original training it did, and the technical report they got explains all the details here. But the headline news is that for the old version of the model, 3.5, accuracy for some was very good, but for others it was lower. But if you look at the greener line, which includes ChatGPT 4, you see that the accuracy of many of these papers has jumped from between the 20 and 50 centile range up into the 80 to 90 centile range in terms of performance. Some are strikingly high. So it's particularly good at these kind of fixed answer type assessments, where often there's, a single solution or a limited range of solutions to the problems. One other thing they did, which was interesting, is that many of these benchmarks are written in English, and they wanted to get a sense of capability of other languages. So they translated a benchmark suite of 14,000 multiple choice problems, which cover a really massive range of subjects, in fact 57, using Azure Translate. And they found that in 24 out of the 26 languages, including some very low resource languages, as you can see, like Welsh, they actually outperforms the English language performance on ChatGPT 3.5. So this raises some really interesting questions, which we won't address here, around, particularly the use of these tools in international students or students who have other languages other than English, which they're fluent in, and the capabilities of these particular tools there. So what does this mean for assessment? Obviously, it's clearly a risk to the integrity of current assessment practices. Does it mean all assessments need to be thrown away? No. Does it mean that some assessment practices will have to change? Most likely. And certainly the most at risk are those with closed or fixed answers, things like MCQ examinations or short word written reports with a very fixed title. They will need to be adapted or changed properly. More broadly, in terms of adapting assessment, the bigger question is perhaps about the awareness that we as educators have for the capabilities of GenAI, and how they can be modelled into our current assessment practices. So banning is not an option. So how do we integrate and use them in a careful, considered way? And how do we allow students to use them in a way that doesn't contravene any academic misconduct regulations? There's some broader questions about quality assurance processes to make sure these things are addressed and looked for by those purveying our work, and about quality enhancement activities, making sure we have the flexibility and capability to adapt our practice in order to make changes necessary through GenAI in a timely fashion. And I just want to finish by talking about a different domain of practice, and that domain of practice is research. Perhaps a newer conversation since ChatGPT came, but from a very early day, you were seeing people using it to do things like summarize interview transcripts. And there's been lots of questions about the confidentiality and the protection of data that's input into the tools. Complex issue, but the fact that Google's told its own employees not to put confidential IP into its own Bard chatbot tells you perhaps all you need to know with this regard. I think the headline news is that, if you're going to use AI tools in your research or for the analysis of research data, this is something that must be ethically approved as part of your application process. So that's a brief summary of some of the main concerns.